My starting point when it comes to the consideration of any issue relating to free speech is my passionate belief that the second most precious thing in life is the right to express yourself freely.
Rowan Atkinson, the man who has brought laughter to countless audiences as Mr. Bean, has recently put Labour Party leader Keir Starmer in a rather awkward situation. By boldly exposing the absurdity in Starmer's authoritarian decisions, Atkinson has forced our seemingly pretend Prime Minister into a tight corner, leaving him potentially on the verge of resignation. We'll dive into the details of this issue in today's video. But first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest political news from across the nation. In a recent impassioned speech, Atkinson criticised the irrationality of modern censorship laws. He raised the question of what freedom of speech in the United Kingdom would look like if even mild remarks could lead to arrests. Rowan Atkinson isn't just a renowned comedian, known for his character Mr. Bean. Over the years, he has become a powerful voice in support of free speech and has consistently opposed censorship efforts. Atkinson frequently criticises what he refers to as the outrage industry, where certain individuals or groups stir up public anger to silence remarks they consider unacceptable. He cited cases such as the Oxford man who was arrested for calling a police horse gay, or a teenager prosecuted for describing Scientology as a cult. According to Atkinson, these incidents reveal serious abuses of authority by the government. He worries that laws intended to protect society from offensive speech have turned into tools that criminalise ordinary, sometimes harmless behaviours. As Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer has continually emphasised the importance of balancing free speech with the protection of vulnerable groups from hate speech. He presents himself as an advocate for vibrant public debates, while also supporting laws to curb the spread of profoundly harmful speech. With his legal experience as a former director of public prosecutions, he has crafted a cautious approach in seeking this balance. He believes it's essential to restrict speech that could lead to hatred, violence or discrimination, while still protecting everyone's right to express their opinions. This commitment has seen Starmer steer the Labour Party back toward the centre since he took on the leadership. Being elected Labour leader marked a significant honour in his career. Under Starmer's direction, the Labour Party has implemented several policies aimed at tackling harmful speech, especially in online spaces where misinformation and hate speech are growing concerns. Starmer has called for a crackdown on abuse, particularly on social media, where vulnerable groups such as minorities are frequently targeted. He argues that failing to control harmful speech risks creating a more divided and unsafe society. However, this viewpoint isn't shared by supporters like Rowan Atkinson, who worry that such policies could go too far and become barriers to legitimate debate. Atkinson sees a rationale for curbing hate speech, but also warns of the danger that these measures may overstep when punishing merely offensive or unpopular remarks. He argues that laws restricting offensive language often appear overly authoritarian and one-sided, giving authorities the power to decide what constitutes offensive or harmful speech. This approach could lead to innocent individuals being prosecuted simply for expressing views that don't align with mainstream opinion. Rowan Atkinson has long been a defender of free speech, and his recent comments have highlighted numerous bizarre and alarming cases where individuals faced prison time for actions that most people would consider harmless or normal. One of the prominent examples he mentions is the now famous gay horse incident in Oxford. In this case, a man was arrested for calling a police horse gay. It's hard to believe that such an incident could lead to legal consequences, but that's exactly what happened. The man's comment was deemed offensive, and the police decided to arrest him. Atkinson cited this example as clear evidence of the police's overreach, where the law is enforced in a way that is completely disconnected from common sense. According to him, cases like these exemplify an abuse of power, where authorities become overly sensitive to harmless remarks, ultimately suppressing freedom of speech. The fact that the case related to Scientology was dropped at a certain stage of the trial process is proof that the law still works effectively. Although the only reason these cases were dismissed was due to intense public scrutiny on law enforcement officials. Another notable case mentioned by Atkinson involves a teenager who was arrested for holding a sign criticising the Church of Scientology, calling the organisation a cult. Scientology often finds itself at the centre of debates, as many criticise its activities and label it as secretive. However, in this situation, criticism from young protesters was treated as a crime and prosecuted, leading to police intervention. This teenager was arrested merely for expressing a critical view of a religious organisation. Atkinson used this case to illustrate that the line between legitimate criticism and illegal speech has become blurred, especially when it concerns controversial or powerful organisations. He argued that criticism of a religion or naming a religion should not become grounds for legal action. Instead, such statements should be protected under free speech rights, even if they may offend some people. In a 9 o'clock news segment a few years ago, a sketch was shown in which Griffey's character Jones played Constable Savage, a blatantly racist police officer, and another character was reprimanding him. Atkinson also reflected on his previous works, referencing comedic sketches from the show Not the 9 o'clock News, where absurd arrests served as inspiration for humorous stories. This show once featured a fictional police officer arresting a man for ridiculous offences, such as wearing an open shirt in a crowded area. At the time, these scenes were purely meant to satirise and mock oppressive and irrational law enforcement ideas. However, as Atkinson pointed out, real life today seems to be mimicking satire in a disturbing way. Incidents like the arrest of the man for calling a police horse gay feel like something that has just come out of one of these classic comedies. The only difference is that this time it's real. Atkinson argued that laws like these, when abused, could significantly impact ordinary people. People without backgrounds or prominence, unlike celebrities, are very vulnerable to prosecution. They cannot defend themselves against authoritarian institutions. Atkinson emphasised that these cases reveal an urgent need to reconsider the balance between free speech and the desire to limit offensive behaviour. To draw media attention, even for actions considered violations, people are often arrested, questioned, taken to court, and then released. Clearly, these extreme authoritarian actions do not reflect the proper functioning of a legal system. The core of Rowan Atkinson's argument is his criticism of Section 5 of the Public Order Act, a highly controversial piece of legislation often used to prosecute individuals for statements deemed offensive. Although Section 5 has been in existence for decades, its scope has increasingly extended to cases many see as trivial or absurd, as illustrated by Atkinson's examples. Traditionally, this law was established to protect public order, allowing authorities to intervene when speech or behaviour became threatening. However, over time, the definition of offence has expanded excessively, leaving room for subjective interpretations. While the goals of these laws may be noble, their enforcement sometimes paints a picture of an increasingly authoritarian society. Do these laws genuinely serve the public interest? Or are they simply tools to control speech and stifle dissent, as illustrated by the case of a man arrested in Oxford for calling a police horse gay? Or take the case of a teenager arrested for calling the Church of Scientology a cult, or a cafe owner arrested for display issues. For Starmer, this is certainly a difficult situation. On one hand, the Labour Party's stance on controlling hate speech is necessary to address legitimate concerns about online abuse, racism, and other harmful actions. On the other hand, if seen as too restrictive of free speech, this could damage Labour's appeal, especially among those who value open debate and fear censorship. Starmer might face criticism from Atkinson if he hopes to avoid being viewed as authoritarian, especially as Atkinson is not alone in holding these views. Public opinion is also heavily influenced by prominent figures like Rowan Atkinson. His engagement in the debate on free speech, especially through public speeches or television interviews, carries significant weight as it resonates with the community. When a celebrity like Atkinson expresses his views on this issue, it compels the public to reconsider their perspective. Atkinson's influence can shift perspectives on free speech, framing it not just as a legal issue, but as a cultural one. In the current political environment, where debates on political transparency, security, and free speech are intensifying, his voice has amplified concerns within certain segments of society.